Every conversation explores the art of thinking beyond the obvious. And today I have my special guest. And one of his advocacy, nothing happens until someone sells something other than Mr. John Lusser.
Thank you, Daniel. Glad to be here.
Welcome, Mr.
Thank you.
John on Abstract Essay. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Yes, most certainly be happy to. I am a career professional salesperson that has learned more about sales from my failures than my successes, even though I had both. And come around COVID time or so, the thoughts formulated in my head where I realized that the biggest problem that we had in the small and medium sized businesses is that the business owners or the business founders don't really understand sales, or they're scared of sales, or they don't want to understand sales. And then the decisions that they make lead them down a path that does not allow them to pivot when things like COVID happen. So a lot of my friends, salespeople, were out of a job not because they weren't making their numbers, but because their company couldn't provide an environment where they could make their numbers. And I said, I got to fix that. So that's my mission at this point.
And Mr. John, thank you so much for fixing it and sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. And today let's talk about why sales is not the real problem and how or what to fix instead. So tell us, you
Sure.
argue that sales performance is often just a symptom. What are the most common disease in an organization that manifests as sales problem?
Okay. Now, great question. A great way to look at it. Because when you think about it, sales as a noun, not as a verb, but as a noun, are what business people equate to success, and they equate that to money. So when they don't have enough revenue, or they have expenses that are too high, so the revenue doesn't make margin, what they look at is they say, "Ooh, I don't have revenue," which means, "Ooh, I don't have sales." And so they chase a no sales problem. Now, how do you chase a no sales problem? There are a few ways that you can do that. One of the ones that they do it is they lower their price. The reason they do that is because most people don't understand what problem they have. They don't understand what problem they're trying to solve. They're looking for a common language to express what they believe they're feeling. And that common language, at least in Western cultures, is price, because that's something that they can put their head around. Ooh, X number of dollars versus less X number of dollars. So they go, oh, I will try a price play. That doesn't really work because they're not hitting the main problem. Oh, maybe I'll add more features to the product, which just gets them in a deeper hole because they have to spend the money to get the features. So what's the biggest and the most obvious solution that they can think of? Let's go hire a salesperson. And this is where a lot of the fun really begins. Because let's think about this for a second. What is the real role of a salesperson? I know I'm going to get people that come from the consciousness space, and they're going to go, oh, that's a horrible way to look at it. Daniel, let me tell you something. I am a realist.
Mm,
Um, I am not a nasty person, but I just believe that you have to be real about life.
true.
So they go on to hire a salesperson, and what a salesperson is supposed to be very good at is changing perspective. So they change the perspective of the person who's hiring them to get them to believe that they can solve the problem. And unfortunately, there are a number of cases where salespeople come in. They really don't care about the business or care about achieving in the business. What they care about is giving themselves some breathing room and picking up on the salary, or maybe doing a little bit of work. See, what's interesting is that the turnover of sales reps in the United States is something like 4 times as fast as the national average for other roles. 4 times as fast. So they last a quarter of the time that most other people last. Why? Because they're not getting the job done. So the salesperson comes in and, for all intents and purposes, convinces the hiring person, "Oh, I can do the job," when they really either can't or they won't. Now, next piece that gets really interesting, and you see this a lot. You see this when people talk about hiring and hiring practices right now. Everybody wants the unicorn. Everybody wants the one person who's going to ride up in their white horse and is going to sell and beat the competition and make this person's dreams become reality and they can ride off in the golden sunset. Well, here's the problem. The really good guys, and there are some really, really good salespeople out there. There may be 3% of the target of the whole population of salespeople. You have to wonder where they're going to work and why they're going to work. It's like me coaching a college basketball team and getting upset that I can't get LeBron James on my team. Why would LeBron James want to play for my team if LeBron James isn't getting his needs met? So they sit there and go, "Oh, I need to get the best salesperson." Well, the best salesperson is going to work for you. Well, I have great product. I pay great commissions. Yeah, but it's the environment. A really good salesperson doesn't even think about how much they're going to make because they know they can make as much as they want to make. And I'm serious about this. I'm talking about people that can make anywhere from three, four, five, six, seven, eight, 900,000, $1 million a year as employees. So if the environment isn't right and there are right environments for them, why should they come and work for you? So where does that leave these people? It leaves them at the point where they have to, at some point, if they really want to master this, they have to understand that chasing sales is the wrong approach. That sales is something that occurs if you do your work before. So there was talked interviews with coaches, and they would say, "Oh, what does it take to be, a Olympic gold medalist in the 100-meter dash?" And the coach would say, "Oh, well, all you have to do is run a quarter of a second faster than the person who won last year." Well, when you think about that and you think how the human brain internalizes that, that's kind of a ridiculous statement. If you think about how somebody like Michael Jordan in basketball, Patrick Mahomes in football, any of the top athletes, when you really look at their work ethic, when you really look at how they position themselves, not only do they outwork everybody, but they are students of the game. So as a business owner, you have to start to look at things like, am I creating the environment where a top salesperson wants to work? But even before I get to that question, am I creating an environment where my target buyer is willing to buy from me? You don't need particularly a salesperson to make revenue, to make sales. What you need is an attitude, a mindset that is conducive to the buyer. The whole notion of, oh, you need product, and you need product that works, and you need customer service, all of that's wonderful, but that doesn't even come into play until you start to generate enough revenue. So the question is, where are you? If you are in the beginning stage where you're trying to get the first sale on a customer, that comes from person to person trust and the ability for the buyer to believe that you have their interests at heart and that you are going to get them the result that they're looking for. Not that you're going to deliver a product to them, but that you're going to help them solve their problem and you're the person to do it. That's a trust factor. A lot of ways that happens. Very good salespeople, and some people again might not like this, very good salespeople can manufacture trust because they understand enough about how people think and how people feel and the triggers that get people to feel the way they need them to feel, that they don't necessarily have trust. Another way to look at that is con men. There are some con men that can do that too. All right, so take a breath. Sales is not the issue. Sales is the byproduct of a job well done. Sales is the byproduct of the business owner understanding the value that they bring, not the product that they bring, but the value that they bring to their target market. And value, by the way, is not determined by the seller. Value is determined by the buyer. So let me say
Miss,
that again. Value
yes.
is not determined by the seller. Value is determined by the buyer. Features are determined by the seller.
Mr. John, why is the sales team and default scapegoat when revenue lags? What does this blame us about the rest of the company's health?
It's an easy scapegoat. Um, and you have to understand, and again, I can only speak about the United States. The viewpoint of a salesperson or the perspective of a salesperson by the public has, for the most part, always been very negative. The salesperson is the person that manipulates. The salesperson is the person that lies. The salesperson will cheat you. The salesperson are sleazy. These are stereotypes that have been in our society for a very long time, and they've been perpetuated through books and through movies and through articles and all sorts of different ways. And understand that to a large extent, and I would say the to a large extent to the I would say 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, that the way a lot of salespeople sold, and this isn't a negative, it's just what they had to work with. They sold not based on the value that they could bring, but they sold based on the information that they could restrain the customer from getting. Because back in those days, you didn't have internet. Back in those days, you had libraries and you had annual reports from public companies and you had product sheets that you had to go through the salesperson to get. See, nowadays, the buyer knows more about your product than the salesperson does. So in the early days, salespeople could manipulate the situation, and a lot of buyers didn't like the fact that they were being manipulated because they knew they were, but they really didn't have a choice. So these stereotypes have persisted. So it's easy to get rid of the salesperson because, by the way, salespeople lie and cheat and steal anyhow. The other thing is, quite frankly, a lot of the very, very good salespeople, they don't really understand how they sell, and this is not a negative at all. This is a fact of life. There are a lot of people that are very good at what they do, and they can't teach anybody else because it's instinctive. It's just part of who they are and part of how they process. So it's hard to explain what they do. So it looks to the outside world extremely easy when it's not. Well, I mean, gee, if the salesperson could sell, it looks really easy. We don't really need them. We can take that on ourselves and sell a whole bunch, save a whole bunch of money in commission. And again, they're not addressing the core problems within their own organization. So they blame the salesperson.
Mr. John, for the founder led companies, what is the most difficult truth they need to hear about why their sales team might be underperforming when the problems likely start with them?
So in a lot of founder led organizations, so we're talking smaller, earlier stages, but you'll see how this can extend. The reason the company is formed is because the founder has a problem and they solve the problem somehow. Most solutions, when you think about it, are of a technical nature. I'm not saying they're hard, they're physical, but it's a technical process or some kind of technical solution. The founder then says, "Oh, this is wonderful. If I have this problem and I know five of my friends do, the market must have this problem," and goes out to try to sell that solution to the problem. But what they talk about is the elegance of the solution. They talk about the features, they talk about the functions. This is why you will see so many times people will say, "Oh, well, let's just get them in a demo," which is one of the most horrifically wrong things that you can do from that attitude. Demos are not there to sell, demos are there to prove a point. But so people want to spend their time and energy, founders, and make people fall in love with their solution. The buyer is not looking for a product. No buyer is ever wakes up in the morning and says, "Oh, I got to go get a product." The buyer wakes up in the morning and says, "Oh, I have a problem I need to solve." The problem has two sides to it. There's a personal side and then there's a business side. They're trying to figure out, one, how do I solve this problem? And two, is the person that I'm about to speak with, can I trust them enough to solve the problem? The founder comes in and says, oh, look at all the neat features. There's a huge disconnect in the communication from the very beginning, and credibility is lost generally in the first 3 minutes of a conversation. The salespeople follow the same path, most of them. So they're no better than the founder. What the founder hasn't done is said, what value, true value, can I bring to my target market? What problem am I solving that my target market cares about? Not that I care about, but that they care about. And understand every buyer, even though they might be in the same target market, is coming at it with a slightly different problem. That's the personal side. So the best thing, and I take people through this in my programs, the best thing that somebody can do is really get to the nuts and bolts of what is the value that I am offering from the buyer's perspective. Most people don't even understand that that's a thing.
Interesting indeed, Mr. John. And when sales complains about lead quality, what are the specific diagnostic questions you ask marketing to uncover the root of the disconnect?
Oh my goodness, that's a great question. Too often, marketing takes this same perspective: product features, product functionality. Then they go and look at, is the target audience the right size company? Can they buy? Uh, they ask questions such as, is this in your budget? What is your decision time frame? The buyers just, they simply don't care. So then they say, okay, that's a 40% lead or a 50% lead based on some criteria that does not map the buyer's buying cycle. It maps their cycle, it maps the seller's cycle. They then take that quote unquote lead, because the person might have said, yes, I'm interested, but nobody said, okay, why are you interested? What is it exactly that you would like to understand? What problem are you trying to solve? Could you express that to me? They never ask things like that. Then they hand it off to the salesperson who just goes, we're great, we're wonderful, we're number one in the industry. We have the best product. Look at our ratings. It's the cheapest product. When are you ready to buy? And the buyer goes, wait a minute, I never even said that. It's the old story of the old lady that walks into a hardware store to buy a drill, and the new salesperson comes up to her and starts to tell her all about the wonders of all these different drills and the different options and the different power settings and the strengths and the weight and all these other things. And she looks at him after 10 minutes and says, Sonny, all I ever wanted to know was, can it make a hole? So there's this huge disconnect.
Hmm. So, Mr. John, how can a company honestly assess if its a product is truly sales ready and does not require a heroic effort and over promising to close a deal?
Probably the best way to do it, and this is not necessarily the most practical, but the best way to do it is to go out and have conversations with a number of prospective buyers, not from the point of view of telling them how wonderful it is, but having them review your product and have a discussion about what problem do they think that would solve? Why is that problem important to solve from the buyer's perspective? And where does that problem fit in the order of priorities? You can have somebody that says, yes, that's a problem for me. But if they have 10 other problems that are more severe, that are more significant, that are more immediate, it doesn't really matter if they're trying to solve your problem. The timing isn't right. Unless somehow you can show them that solving that problem is actually more important than solving the other 10 or 15 in front of them. But unless you know that, you're not going to be able to have that conversation.
Interesting, Mr. John. So, as a 40 plus years in sales leadership, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
I am just right now trying to get to as many small businesses as I can. The the business climate here in the United States is getting progressively worse. There is so much more uncertainty. There is so much more noise that people need to understand that what is going on is people are communicating with people, and we need to just ratchet the conversation down and talk to each other as if we're friends and say, hey, I think I can help you solve X problems. Is that the problem you have? Or the buyer can say, I have this problem. And the seller can say, yes, I do believe I can solve that problem for you. I need to get the conversation excitement level ratcheted down so people start to really pay attention to the value that they bring, and people really start to pay attention to what problems they're trying to solve. A lot of buyers I've run into, in fact, the majority of buyers I've run into don't really understand the problem they're trying to solve. They just have words for it. But unless we do that, the hype that's going on, especially with this, with all of this stuff that's going on right now about AI, all the stuff that's going on economically, the fact that everybody's thinking now, are we going into recession or not? All it's doing is causing stress and tension in the mind of the buyer and in the mind of the seller. And I'm trying to get some of that relieved.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. John, and looking forward for more success. And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be like you?
Calm down. Just calm down.
Relax.
Try, yeah, relax, relax, and understand that sales is at its best two people trying to solve a problem and both benefiting from that problem being solved. And honestly, what I like most about sales is, I mean, the money's good. When it hits, the money is wonderful. But what is the best is knowing that I've helped somebody solve a problem that they couldn't solve on their own. The sales come when that happens. The money comes when that happens. So you don't have a sales problem. You have a value proposition problem. You have an alignment problem. Solve those.
Yes, definitely. And thank you for that advice, Mr. John. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please to listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well, geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast law 101 and mental health 101. Love Letters in third season, and Movie 101 Review, Music 101 in fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. John, if you could permanently replace the question, why are not we selling more? With a better question for leadership to ask, what would that new question be?
There is a wonderful question that I will paraphrase, and it comes from the book, The Challenger Sale. And I'm paraphrasing it. And the question is, what is causing my customer to leave money on the table that I am uniquely qualified to solve? And if you can answer that question honestly, you should have no problem getting sales.
Certainly, Mr. John Lester. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your business, your advocacy, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Yes, thank you, Daniel. I appreciate it. And if anybody is interested, you showed it before, attitudeselling.com. Get in touch with me. Love to talk to you.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. John Lester because if you support him for sure, more and more empowering sales advocacy to come. So, Mr. John, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Dan.
Monicom people, see you soon.